Team DeSantis versus Team Trump. I think it is time that people understand what's actually going on here and why it is so important that we do not let the establishment GOP divide us. It is officially time to fully break down the Team DeSantis, Team Trump debacle. What is actually going on? Now, before we get into this, guys, this right here is not an indictment on Trump or an indictment on Governor Ron DeSantis. You see, I called it Team DeSantis, Team Trump, of course, it being part two of the GOP Civil War series that I've got, of course, talking about how to actually fix the GOP. And there'll be two more takes that will come out probably next week, and that right there will be the end of the actual politic nonsense for the time being on this channel, because occasionally I do get a little bit more political versus actual societal. Now, we will be discussing that there more in the future, and I'll be giving you guys some updates on some actual plans that will be going on for this channel going further, or I may actually release an updated one on Saturday, but I'm definitely going to be leaving you guys some hints towards the end of the video, so make sure you guys actually stick around for the full video. Now, the reason why I called this Team DeSantis versus Team Trump is because we've got these people on Twitter, and we'd like to call them the DeSimps. Now, this is, like I said, this is not an indictment on Ron DeSantis, okay? I'm not here to bash him or anything like that, but I'm here to just bring some light to a few things, because there's some things that people on Twitter will not tell you. And, of course, things that people on Fox News will not tell you. Analysts just will not tell you the full extent of everything. The reason why we call them the DeSimps is because they just think Ron DeSantis can't do no wrong and that Trump is essentially orange man bad. That sounds rather familiar. That sounds a lot like a lot of people who did not vote in 2016, stayed home, and de facto supported Hillary Clinton. Now, guys, really quick, I'm not going to bash anybody for that. I mean, if you want to pick a certain candidate over another one, go right ahead. I really and truly don't care. I'm not here to indict you. This is not an indictment on that. You can choose whoever you want. I personally want a unified party. And, of course, after thinking things through, even after mentioning what I have discovered and of course, uncovered about the whole business, and of course, DeSantis' record from Congress, and of course, when you looked into everything that was going on in Florida, of course, how much I got to praise him over. Of course, we know about the G word people. I got to say G word instead of the actual full word, because YouTube actually laid one of those nice little phantom strikes on my channel yesterday. Of course, I appealed it and it was removed. But we have to tread lightly, especially as far as language is concerned. You see, the thing about 2024, at least from my perspective, is this here. And I wasn't thinking clearly in one of my takes, which, by the way, I still stand by everything I've said. The thing is this right here. In North Carolina, we have a governor's race going on at the exact same time of a presidential race. So it would make perfect sense for me to go in there, vote the way I vote, normally a ballot, pencil in or write in Mark Robinson, who will more than likely be the gubernatorial candidate. And, of course, if DeSantis or, hell, even Greg Abbott is the friggin' nominee, which, by the way, I don't think Greg Abbott's going to run, it wouldn't make sense for me to leave that blank, if you guys know what I'm saying. So just go ahead and know right now that at the end of the day, I will always come out to keep the Democrat out of office. I'm not like Ben Shapiro. I'm not like any of those guys there. If you want to say I got no scruples, I really truly don't care. Most of you guys who've been with me long enough know that I actually do have scruples, and I never really and truly backtrack on any takes unless something was absolutely 100% wrong. Now, with that right there being said, let's go ahead and go through what this video is actually about. So we're talking about the DeSimps themselves. We're also going to be talking about Trump's speech. Now, before we do that, though, we're also going to be talking about what the Senate has done, which, by the way, is going to weave in a little bit later on in this video, because I've actually got let's just say I got a theory on what exactly Mitch McConnell is actually trying to do. We're going to be talking about the donors, of course, that are coming from Team DeSantis, which, by the way, the DeSimps on Twitter will not tell you about. We'll also go talk about what the actual end game is. And, of course, we'll be talking about stuff like what the Senate really and truly is. Let's be honest, it's a boys' club. We'll be coming back to it very shortly. You are seeing this little black square right now that has got a list of some clips that we're going to be going back to, that we're going to be kind of showing, to kind of help you guys out with kind of what's going on here and how people, for the most part, normally feel, because we don't want a divided base. Now, with that right there being said, I'm going to be very, very quick on this right here. The United States Senate once again screwed conservatives over. Of course, these right here being the conservative senators. Of course, you guys know about Mitt Romney saying he did not want any more investigations into Biden. That right there does not surprise me, because Mitt Romney is a very, very weak person. He's probably going to be primaried out in 2024. But obviously, you guys are seeing this list of Republican senators who voted to codify gay marriage, which is, in a lot of ways, is ridiculous. See, me personally, I'm against it, but I've always said that the states should decide, or the states should actually put the laws in place for that to take place or not to take place. That's a states' rights issue. All these senators that you just saw, and one of them, of course, is Richard Burr from North Carolina. I'm embarrassed to even say that he's from North Carolina. He actually ran against this nonsense. And of course, you've got Roy Blunt there from Missouri. A lot of these people are on their way out, leaving in 2022. Burr, Blunt, in particular, Bob Portman. Bob Portman's son is gay, so I could kind of understand why he did it, even though I don't agree with him, but I understand why he did it. But most of these senators, except for Romney, are senators that either A, just got reelected this cycle, got elected in 2020, thus will not be coming out of office until 2026. Just so that way you guys can know, the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell, is a great big giant boys club. I just figured I would go ahead and throw that out there now. However, to not sound fully tribal, I want to go ahead and explain the other half of this. You see, Democrat voters are also upset too. And do you know why? Because they had a certain amount of senators come out and vote against all the COVID restrictions, basically saying we need to get back to normal. All of these senators that I just put up are senators that you have seen on television at some point in time. Now, why in the world would they have been on television at some point in time here recently? Because every single one of them have either A, been reelected, or B, are not up for reelection for a while. It's called politics. It's called trying to get the vote. That's what these politicians really and truly care about. They care about nothing except the actual vote, the actual power staying in the office, as we will break down a little bit further in this video, because I kind of have a theory on this whole Team Trump, Team DeSantis stuff. So make sure you guys stick around for the full video. Now, guys, before we go any further, I'm going to play you these two clips. Number one, first of all, this is one from Richard Baris, and the other one, of course, is from Mark Levin, reminding you guys not to put much stock into polls.
That the leadership in the Republican Party wants to take a powder. They don't want 50 seats, 60 seats, 70 seats. They'd rather have it a tight so they can control it, a tighter, a majority to obviously take control, but to be tighter, because what last thing they want is a bunch of Donald Trump endorsed folk showing up there and raising holy hell. Are you a believer in that?
Absolutely. Kevin McCarthy does not want to end up like John Boehner. And remember what happened to Kevin last time. There was a wave and influx of people that they didn't know, didn't get a chance to vet. He didn't get the gavel. He couldn't make it. He didn't have the votes. Paul Ryan had to be the compromise candidate. There is no compromise candidate anymore. So right now you have Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell basically counting votes, not counting seats. I mean, I hate to be the breaker of bad news to everybody. Now, there's only so much they can do to control that, Steve. But they want a manageable establishment majority. That is why next Tuesday, it's not just Arizona, it's Michigan, it's Missouri. It's very important. The last of these primaries will do a lot to define who the Republican Party is going into not just 2022, but the presidential election in 2024.
This is Life, Liberty, and Levin. So what do we make of last Tuesday? You know, sometimes a little time to digest these things is a lot better than on-the-spot analysis. And I noticed that many of the same people who were wrong about a red wave are now telling us what to think about a non-red wave. The experts, the consultants, the ruling class, the media, the politicians, we need to think for ourselves. Enough of the static. I said before the election, and I said repeatedly here and on radio, forget about the red wave, forget about a red tsunami, forget about Armageddon, and vote.
Now, before we get on to some of the takes on Donald Trump's speech, I got to throw this out here. Mark Levin was basically saying, go out there and vote. It doesn't matter what the polls say, go out there and vote. Now, let me kind of take a very quick second on this. Before 2022, the election, okay, and I talked about this in my previous video, of course, the GOP Civil War. And of course, you see a lot more of what Levin said, which, by the way, I'll leave the full link to his actual episode on Life, Liberty, and Levin. I'll leave that in the description box. Basically, what he did in that video was he outlined how 2024 is probably the actual year of the red wave, considering all the Senate seats up that Democrats have to defend. But the thing is this right here. A lot of pollsters were saying that Republicans were going to win bigly. They were going to win they were going to win a ridiculous amount of seats. That obviously did not happen. Of course, some of these polls were Trafalgar, who is one of the more reliable pollsters, who has aligned itself with the Daily Wire, which is kind of funny how the Daily Wire aligned themselves with Trafalgar, who got it completely wrong, then to only turn right back around and blame Donald Trump for all the midterm, let's just say, mishaps. Of course, you had a lot of polling companies, which by the way have a more of a left-wing bias. Of course, we're talking about Monmouth, Quinnipiac, all those polls, YouGov, and even some that are much, much more accurate, all got this entire polling cycle wrong. Basically, what Mark Levin is saying is that turnout is what wins elections, not polls. And to go on top of this, you expect me to believe the people who said that the Republicans are going to have are going to have a massively large red wave. You expect me to believe their polling data going forward? Because at the end of the day, it's all about actually getting out there and actually voting. That's actually the point of this, is that you've actually got to get out there and actually vote. Now, that right there being said, let's talk a little bit about Trump's speech. That speech, in my opinion, was much, much more measured. You got people out there, one of them was Jeb Bush Jr. saying that it was very, very low energy. I didn't pick that up. Initially, I was kind of thinking, when is he going to blow up here? I mean, it sounded more to me like he was trying to be more of a uniter. Now, obviously, he's thrown some very, very weird takes at Governor DeSantis. He even attacked Governor Glenn Youngkin, which I have no idea why he did that. Maybe they were petty pot shots. Maybe they were failures. I discussed in one of the videos about the sanctimonious content, and I think that what it really was a shot across the bow saying, wait your turn, stay out of my way. A lot of speculation is that Ron DeSantis is probably going to try to run for president. He's the establishment pick, as we'll go over in Ron's donors here in a second. But you'll see towards my theory, this right here may not be fully the case. And even myself have kind of jumped the gun on this. And for that right there, I want to go ahead and apologize, even though I normally don't backtrack on stuff. But then again, though, every day is a brand new learning process. And you tend to find out something new every day, which has kind of led me to kind of come to this theory that I've come up with. Fact of the matter is that Trump's speech, he did not attack any fellow Republicans. He, for the most part, laid out a second-term agenda. Of course, one of those things was locking up drug dealers, which, by the way, I'm in favor of, is realistically not going to happen. But he talked about term limits. He talked about getting rid of insider trading. He basically talked about the things that I said in the video that, quite frankly, what he needs to do to win in 2024 is run strictly on a reform platform. It sounded to me like what he wanted was straight-up reforms, which is something that this country desperately needs. And if you've got a president who's on a one-term proposition, which I would think is actually fabulous. I mean, look, I'm as conservative as you can get, but I'm not so tribal that I'm going to come out here and cry and whine when my party loses. That's just not the way I am. I think that these reforms are perfect, and I think that we actually need them. Energy reform, military reform, get rid of the wokeness. Of course, crime, a new crime bill, getting rid of certain stupid things, actually running on crime. He talked about crime a lot. That right there will go over very, very well, even in some big blue cities, a lot like what Zeldin proved. By the way, Zeldin is fielding calls for GOP chair. I really truly hope he gets it. I will take him over Ronna McDaniel any day of the week. Also, other things to consider, and I've said this before, is that the speech itself was actually measured, very measured. It was so measured that Fox News, well, just go ahead and roll this.
If you watched his speech on Fox News, that was pretty much all that you heard, because it wasn't long before Sean Hannity and friends interrupted his speech, literally right in the middle of it, and then just started gossiping.
When you look at this Donald Trump tonight, a very serious, very powerful speech. This is Donald Trump, and it's game time for him.
You mean the speech that he's literally giving right now that you're not even airing? Luckily, Newsmax aired the entire speech completely uninterrupted, and of course you could watch it on various live streams as well. Seriously, this is what Fox News has become.
Eric Trump got more subpoenas.
Now we're going to go back to former President Trump when news warrants.
The news is warranting right now. The news is happening right now. The speech is literally right now.
That's right. Fox News cut it off mid-speech. They put him in the sidebar with Sean Hannity speaking and Lauren Ingraham. This right here sounds to me like we're going to prop up anybody and everybody not named Trump, which, by the way, Trump could just air everything live on CNN, which, by the way, I don't think is going to happen, even though CNN is hurting for ratings right now. And, of course, Jeff Zucker's ratings and his cash flow went through the roof during 2016, of course, when Trump was the president. Yeah, I think it would be a big-time mistake, especially considering the fact that Trump has got a lot of the base already built in, especially in Midwestern states like Iowa, Ohio. By the way, the Republican nomination is normally won in the Southeast and in the Midwest. Okay, outside of the states out west, like, say, Montana, Idaho, which are normally lower delegate states, but very, very important, very, very beautiful states. I love those places. Texas, of course, if you got to win those states right there to get the Republican nomination. I'll probably do more videos in the future because right now at this point in time, we're still early. And, of course, the only person who's actually announced is Donald Trump. There was this guy out of Montana who announced the other day. And, of course, there's a lot of indications that Mike Pence himself may be trying to run because he's got a new book out and all that stuff right there. And of course, he's been on CNN basically bashing the Trump administration. The administration he was the vice president for. Don't get me started on that. But the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump is kind of sort of already running, how do I say, he's already running with one hand tied behind his back. We'll come back to Mark Dice in a second because he made another very good point. But the thing about polls, and I didn't bring this up earlier. You see, you guys are seeing these Twitter polls. Now, you're seeing this one from Frank Luntz. Okay, you're saying, okay, well, I guess Trump's still winning the vote. There's a problem, however, though. And you're going to hear this explanation here in a second. And, of course, you're seeing one from Red Eagle Politics. However, you're also seeing one from Mark Dice. The thing is this right here. Twitter and online polls like this for her are not properly measured. And, of course, you've seen some polls here where Trump's ahead. But the fact of the matter is this right. There's also polls out there that show Ron DeSantis ahead. Like Officer Brandon Tatum has got one where Ron DeSantis is up. These type of online polls are not particularly accurate, and the reason why they're not particularly accurate is because they're normally shared friend to friend, and of course you're getting different results, as you will see right here with JP.
Trump is outside the framework of the broken system. So the fact that he is a threat to the most significant tyrants on the planet is something I absolutely love. Now, here's how I think DeSantis fits into this picture. My thoughts on the whole, Trump, DeSantis feud, and now we're, getting even not only the mainstream media, but also the alternative media that is more media that you and I would probably be looking to and valuing their input. There's this, Trump, DeSantis, and DeSantis might be better and all that stuff. Which, by the way, polling shows a lot of people are favoring DeSantis. In fact, let me pull something up for you. Yep, here it is. On my main YouTube channel, Awaken with JP, to be specific, I recently put up a poll. This is 4 days ago. Here it is. Question: who would you rather see run for president in 2024, Trump or DeSantis? With 57,000 people voting, 35% said Trump, 65% said DeSantis. You know what? I agree with both of them. If Trump is the nominee or if DeSantis was the nominee, I would vote for either of them. I would be more than happy to vote for either of them. My hope is that there's not division within the freedom-loving community, much of which is the Republican community. There's plenty of Republicans that are less than freedom-minded people. But the freedom-loving community in the Republican sphere, I so hope there is an influence.
Now, guys, before I show you the next one, which came from Mark Dice, I want to go ahead and throw this out here. At the end of the day, you don't want a party that is completely divided. You want the party to be completely united. And right now, it looks like the establishment is trying to do so. Check this right here out. This right here is a tweet from Mike Cernovich, and I've gone after Mike Cernovich on multiple occasions for being a grifter. Okay, you cannot change my mind about it. That man is an absolute first-rate grifter. Okay, he was a mass carrier during COVID, and of course, he was promptly called out by Styx Hexenhammer, who basically said, "Dude, you're trying to divide the base." That right there is exactly what the GOP wants. Exactly what the establishment GOP wants. By the way, Styx. I like Styx. I listen to Styx. I know he's a little bit eccentric for some people, but I mean, Styx gives spot-on analysis. Styx, by the way, is indicating that he thinks that Trump will get the nomination regardless because of the built-in delegates that came from Steve Bannon. But to kind of reiterate this point, let's go ahead and catch the other side of what Dice was saying, and then we'll come back on the other side.
And throw Donald Trump under the bus. President Trump's petty, and that's what they were, little snipes at Ron DeSantis after he won re-election for governor in Florida didn't go over very well with pretty much anybody, and neither did his outburst at Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, which was strange. Yesterday, I posted this poll on my community tab on my YouTube channel, which is actually a very accurate representation of this audience, which are virtually all diehard MAGAs. And this is not like a poll on Twitter that can be easily manipulated because it just depends on who retweets it. And on Twitter, there's a battle to see who can win the poll by retweeting it and getting it in front of certain people's audiences to then skew the poll. So this is not one of those easily manipulated polls. This is a poll of this channel and this audience. And I just asked, which would be the preferable nominee? in 2024, Ron DeSantis or President Trump. And only 58% voted for Donald Trump, 38% Ron DeSantis, 4% other. So 1/3 of my own audience is tired of Trump or wants DeSantis. DeSantis may not run for several reasons. First of all, he may not think that he can win. He might not be able to win. And if he challenges Donald Trump and happens to get the nomination by some weird fluke, a large segment of MAGA supporters are not going to vote for him in the general election. And him and Trump battling each other is going to send him into the general election extremely tarnished. Not only that, but in today's society, in the midst of a collapsing empire, and that's what the United States is, running for president, and especially winning, ruins your life, as the entire Trump family can attest to. And Ron DeSantis might not want to put his wife and his small kids through that. During his speech last night, Donald Trump put it this way, not to try to scare off any potential competition, but his life has already been ruined. He has already sacrificed his entire life, his career, his wealth, potentially even his freedom, hopefully not his life, in order to do this. And so might as well do it again. Might as well cross the Rubicon. Might as well just...
Guys, you caught at the very end Mark Dice basically saying that Trump's pretty much putting everything on the line, basically his freedom and all that stuff there. And of course, the threat of indictment still looms. They could possibly do something here in the next few weeks or whatever, even though I personally don't think they will, because it's a lame duck session of Congress. And let's just be honest, these people have not been effective, not one bit. Also, something else too, I want to kind of extrapolate this from Trump's speech. He said he felt he would win because the people have not felt the true pain yet. I tend to agree with this because a lot of the stuff from the omnibus spending bill, a lot of the stuff that came from the Inflation Reduction Act, that stuff's not going to go into effect till sometime after Christmas of this year here. And also something else too. It's another reason why I tell people every chance you get to buy an extra can of this or an extra can of that, go ahead and do it, because I got a feeling things are going to get pretty dicey as far as money is concerned. Also, not to mention this FTX scandal. We'll probably save up and do an actual project on that, especially considering after this week where everybody will be doing more societal takes. But here's the thing. Mitch McConnell, they asked Kevin McCarthy, do you support Donald Trump for president? They didn't announce. Of course, people on Twitter, mostly Team Trump, they decided to say, look, man, this is pretty much it. No. That's not the way things work, bro. That's not how it works. Okay? I'm not out here to say that right there is something to get upset about. Let me explain something to you right quick. You just got through with a midterm, okay? The midterm didn't work out the way it should have. We all know the real reason why. We can blame Mitch McConnell. Of course, he didn't fund the Senate. We can also blame Ron McDaniel for not exactly solidifying a message for the House, or else the majority would have been a lot bigger. We can blame people who, quite frankly, just didn't want to vote, which, by the way, they probably didn't take it serious because they thought Republicans were promised a red wave, so they may have stayed home. Additional 4 or 5 million votes that could have been needed. Who knows? That type of stuff happens. Also, something else too, Republicans did win the actual popular vote this cycle. And, of course, California Republicans have figured out how to legally ballot harvest. Well, just figure out, throw that out there. Fact of the matter is that Mitch McConnell and these guys are going to play this close to the vest. They're not going to tell you who the hell they're endorsing at this moment in time. They're more than likely going to stay out of it. They may take pot shots at one another. They may say this. They may say that right there. They may even praise one another. But that don't mean that they're going to endorse somebody right away. Fact of the matter is that the Republican Party and Republican leadership is going to want a primary. The other day, Tim Pool, and I can't believe I'm bringing him up, he actually made a very good point about this, and of course he changes his mind 3 times a day. He's Team DeSantis in the morning, he's Team Trump the second time of the day, he's Team DeSantis the third time of the day, then he's Team Trump the fourth time of the day, and sometimes he reverses his rotation on everything, like the other night after the missile strike, the missile that landed in Poland that actually came from Ukraine, which by the way was accidental. He once again said, well, this is a time where I wish we had Donald Trump. Then, I wish we had, exactly. People are going to change their minds. Things are going to fluctuate from time to time. But even he made a good point saying that maybe we should have a primary. Maybe we should let the iron sharpen iron. You see, the problem is that anytime you bring this up to DeSantis people, they demand Trump step down. They don't demand a primary. They don't even want a primary. They just demand he step down. They demand that Donald Trump not even run. Now, let me throw this out here right quick. This right here is a Twitter thread, okay? This is a Twitter thread. Now, I want you guys to look through this, okay? Look through it very, very good, okay? Now, this Twitter thread, at first, I did not believe was true. I shared this Twitter thread, and of course, there are some dissents on my page who follow me. Well, 3 people commented. All 3, of course, were DeSantis fanboys. One of them was a guy who had 21,000 views. 21,000 followers. I asked him to provide a link debunking this. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, what was the point of this? Well, you see, I shared this Twitter thread blindly with no actual proof to back it up, even though we all know about Ken Griffin. I shared this, basically I did. I shared it with no proof at all. Nobody even bothered to, actually provide any proof that I was lying. However, a simple Google search showed that some of these donors, who, by the way, were heavy Obama donors, did in fact donate to Ron DeSantis, did in fact donate to Jeb Bush. You see, this is the thing about the game. You see, Trump ran against the donors in 2016. He had a grassroots organization. Of course, I went back and fact-checked Trump's donations to him. For the most part, this Twitter thread actually turned out to be, for the most part, accurate. The thing is this right here. Trump is getting a lot of his money from grassroots donors. People are still donating to him. I mean, hell, I still get emails from him at least twice a week. By the way, I'm not going to donate to him right now. I'm going to hand him the $20 this moment in time. I ain't got the cash to throw it out there, but I'm pretty sure if he gets the nomination, hey, I'll probably donate a little bit of money to the Republican nominee, regardless of whoever it is, because I don't want to see the Democrat win. But the mere fact that these people cannot provide proof that DeSantis is not taking money from these people, that he's not at least refusing money from these people, is shockingly alarming to me. Okay, I just figured I would throw that out there. It also indicates to me that it is, for the most part, all bluff and no stuff. The other day, I replied to Raheem Kassam, and of course, Sebastian Gorka, he shared it. I think it got like around 1,000 likes on the tweet. My Twitter feed is not. And by the way, if you got 21,000 followers, why are you commenting back to only 331? Wouldn't you just treat that like a troll? I mean, I just figure I would throw that out there. And of course, you guys are seeing it. They never asked for a debate. They just asked that Donald Trump step down. One last point on DeSantis, and I need to say this, okay, because we keep hearing a lot about lockdowns. Now, guys, let me roll this really quick.
Doing an executive order today directing all Floridians to limit movements and personal interactions outside the home to only those necessary to obtain or provide essential services or conduct essential activities. And we have the list of essential services that is detailed by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and its latest guidance. We also are using what has been done by Mayor Jimenez down in Miami-Dade. You know, they've been operating on essential services now, I think, for a couple weeks. And I think they really did a good job and kind of showed us the way about how to do that. Both Jared Moskowitz and Scott Rivkees will be able to add, if there are some essential services that we missed, you'll be able to add that accordingly. So,
but if you go in and it's just like mayhem, like Dance Party USA, and it's packed to the rafters, that's just cut and dry, and that's not just an innocent mistake. And so I told him, no tolerance for that. Just suspend the license, and then we'll move on. And then people will, I hopefully, get the message that these guidelines are in place for a reason. So we want to make sure people are continuing to follow the basic instructions, whether it's masks, social distancing, washing your hands. That stuff will help reduce the spread. And when we went through this in March and took different actions, March and April, the goal was to slow the spread so that we could flatten the curve.
On the vaccines, too, he was a proponent of getting the vaccines out there. We've discussed this vaccine stuff before. I don't really care about it because I never took it. I was never forced to take it. I understand some people were forced to take it because they had their jobs on the line. But I got to say this one last thing, because we keep hearing stuff like, well, he didn't lock down. He opened up early. Okay, cool, great. I understand that. I wish I was in Florida. As a matter of fact, I want to move to Florida right now. But let me ask you a question. Where does a great deal of Florida's revenue come from? Where does it come from? Tourism, right? Okay, so if Florida is a tourism state, even though people are not flying to Florida, they're still driving there because the price of gas was still cheap. And some states were not locking down, especially Southerners going down to Florida, because I tried to go in the summer. By the way, I found out that the Baris had like an alcohol ordinance in place. So I'm just saying that it's not exactly like it was fully free in certain areas. It was free in some areas. It was free in some areas and not fully free in others. I got a friend of mine who was eating at a buffet where people were still wearing masks. They still had the mask order in place. I'm not going to mention that friend's name, but I will leave a link to his YouTube channel. The thing is this right here. Florida was a tourist state, still is a tourist state. You got small businesses, shops. Of course, you had spring break going on at the time. I can't sit here and honestly say that him not locking down the state, or let's just say him keeping the state, wasn't justified, because keeping the state of Florida open was always an option, because guess what? Florida is a state that, quite frankly, can't lock down because of all the tourist dollars coming in. Which brings me to what I think the overall end game is. Guys, I want you to think about this really quick, and I want you to think long and hard. Ron DeSantis has not announced that he's running. As a matter of fact, DeSantis has even indicated that he may not run. He does not intend on running in 2024. You see, this thing could shake out a few ways. Let me go back to my favorite year, 2012. I want you guys to think about this really quick. In 2012, the Republican swath of candidates, okay, it was a pretty bad bench. The only actual known candidate that was actually really known outside of Mitt Romney was Newt Gingrich. Nobody really truly knew who Rick Santorum was. Newt Gingrich had been Speaker of the House in the mid-90s, of course, during the Clinton administration. He's one of the guys who helped bring all those good deals in the mid-90s. Of course, there were also some bad deals as well. Don't get me started. But Mitt Romney was probably the most known from the previous cycle because he sought the Republican nomination in 2008. Okay, Republicans were scared to death of the prospects. So I want you to think about this year's actual bench of candidates. Now, I'm going to go ahead and lay these candidates out. You see, I had a different theory, and of course, that theory was scrapped. You see, my theory was that what they would do is they'd have Trump, and they'd have 6 more candidates, probably like Liz Cheney, Mike Pence, who else? Tim Scott, maybe Larry Hogan, another never-Trumper, Charlie Baker, a never-Trumper, and probably Nikki Haley. And they would probably have them with Ron DeSantis being number 8. And see, my feeling was that the 6 guys in the middle, 5 or 6, not named Ron DeSantis, would just spend all night attacking Trump, leaving Ron DeSantis completely invulnerable for any type of attack. But then I sat back and I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? There's also something else that may happen. Maybe DeSantis isn't even running in 2024. Maybe he's really designed to run in 2028. You see, like I said before, there are a lot of scenarios here. But the one that I'm leaning towards is actually 2028. Go back to what Mark Dye said. DeSantis' children are small. Also, something else, too, to the guy who was on Jason Whitlock the other night saying that, what was it? He said that your first-round pick, you need to go ahead and run. And my response to that was, dude, Ron's only 42 or 43 years old. He may be a great president someday. Why in the world would you send him out there in this environment to knock off an incumbent president, which, by the way, incumbents are very, very hard to beat? Why would you do that? You see, DeSantis could run in 2028 and he would be 47 years old, 48. That's actually the same age Richard Nixon was in 1960. So by no means is Ron DeSantis an old man. He is a very, very young, spry guy, and I think having 2 full terms would actually help him out going into the presidency. I mean, I remember this other one-term governor named George W. Bush who didn't pull 2 full terms, and I think you guys know what the hell happened there. Mitt Romney only pulled 1 term as governor of Massachusetts, and of course, Mitt Romney took a lot of flack for this. But before I get to what I think the overall end game is, I want you to watch this relatively long segment from Mr. Reagan. You see, the other day when I put the video out, and I had some of Mr. Reagan's comments in there, I left a good half of that video out, and I want you guys to make sure you listen up very, very carefully to this.
The plot against Donald Trump. Mitch McConnell is also involved. You see, during this midterm election cycle, Mitch McConnell made the decisions about where money went to support candidates in various areas of the country. And Mitch McConnell made a very strong decision not to fund Donald Trump-endorsed candidates. The other day, Lou Dobbs tweeted this: "Leader McConnell has got to go. Here is a breakdown of the money spent in some battleground Senate seats. Arizona, Masters, $9 million versus Kelly, $73 million. Georgia, Walker, $32 million versus Warnock, $76 million. Nevada, Laxalt, $12 million versus Cortez, $47 million. And in New Hampshire, Bolduc, $2 million versus Hassan, $36 million. $2 million versus $36 million. I mean, come on, Mitch McConnell, what are you doing here? It almost sounds intentional. Going on. Here's what I think it is. Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell are working with Democrats and the deep state in order to keep control of the government. They want to keep the money flowing, and they want to keep Donald Trump out. So the plan, I believe, was coordinated. let Trump endorse his slate of candidates. Lindsey Graham then sabotages the midterms with his abortion bill. McConnell then neglects to fund Trump-endorsed candidates. They then blame Trump for the midterm losses, and then they get DeSantis in. It's a coordinated effort by both Democrats and deep state Republicans to try to keep Trump out in 2024. I mean, they are desperate to keep Trump out of office. First, it was Russian collusion. Then it was the Ukraine phone call to Zelensky. Then it was the January 6th protests. Then it was the documents at Mar-a-Lago. Nothing has worked. And so now it's this strategy. Trump picked bad candidates and failed to secure victory in the midterms. They are desperate to keep Trump out of office. First, it was Russian collusion. Then it was the Ukraine phone call to Zelensky. Then it was the January 6th protests. Then it was the documents at Mar-a-Lago. Nothing has worked. And so now it's this strategy. Trump picked bad candidates and failed to secure victory in the midterms. Trump's time is up. It's time to move on to DeSantis. So, you know what? Of course, Trump is lashing out. And is it right? And is it good? And is it perfect? I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. Like I said at the beginning of the show, it looks petty. It looks weak. A lot of people are turning their backs on Trump right now. And I don't just mean prominent media personalities. I mean regular American voters. And I think that this is terrible. But even when it comes down to the specifics of what Trump has been saying about DeSantis, there is a lot more to it than you might think. You see, Trump has been betrayed. From what I understand, it looks like DeSantis is going to be running in the 2024 primary against Donald Trump. And you know what? It does seem kind of ungrateful when you consider that Donald Trump really did help DeSantis become the governor of Florida. DeSantis was Trump's guy. It does seem like a bit of a betrayal. But this may not actually be DeSantis's decision. I was texting Sebastian Gorka asking him what the heck was going on with Donald Trump and these messages about DeSantis, and Sebastian Gorka sends me this video in a text message, and he says, watch this. And so I'm sending it now to you guys so you can see what I was told specifically to watch so that I would understand this. And I do have to say, it is enlightening.
Well, the bigger problem I have is that it's really driven by Ken Griffin and Paul Singer and Steve Schwartzman and other people. It's driven by the big Wall Street money.
The money guys.
It's the money guys. These are guys. I don't think Ron DeSantis, in thinking clearly, would ever want to go up in primary President Trump. Right? I think he's getting tons of pressure from the big donors, not the guys writing $1 million checks or $5 million checks, the guys that write $100 million checks. I think you're seeing, particularly Ken Griffin's up front. He moved to Miami to be close to, in Florida to be close to DeSantis. He wants DeSantis as president. He doesn't want Trump. He's prepared to put any amount of money to stop President Trump. Paul Singer's led the Never Trump movement in 15 and 16. He's a deep pocket. I think that's Schwartzman and many, many others that are there. So you've got the money, and they're putting pressure. They don't want President Trump because they don't want a populist nationalist president back in the White House.
Well, they want somebody who they can control.
Is afraid of Donald Trump, and they don't seem to be afraid of Ron DeSantis. And look, that's why Trump is so divisive. But we cannot let the deep state divide us. If you are a DeSantis supporter, do not let your love of Ron DeSantis turn you into a never Trumper. The most important thing that we need to do right now is to get rid of the rhinos in Washington, D.C. We need to drain the swamp. We need to
Now, guys, that was a lot to take in. It was a lot. But given the circumstances of the 2022 midterm race, I don't find it completely unbelievable. Now, guys, before I give you the scenarios in this video, I want to kind of throw this out here. McConnell was asked, I think it was yesterday after the Senate confirmed that he was going to retain his leadership role. He had this right here to say.
And so my message to the administration, and you saw some of it this year, let's find some things between the 40-yard lines that we can agree on and do them. And we did some of that this year. Infrastructure, CHIPS, school safety, mental health. We need to make some progress for the American people, but it's going to have to be in the political center. If the House becomes Republican, there's no more one party running over us like they did through reconciliation.
Now, guys, I'm going to leave you with this last thought, okay, this last set of scenarios. Before I do that, I want to go ahead and say this. In 2009, Mitch McConnell was the Senate Minority Leader, and he said his goal was to make Barack Obama a one-term president. Obama was a very, very dangerous president, okay? He was extremely dangerous. He was basically bringing a pseudo-socialistic, communistic agenda to the United States, really in a lot of ways kind of fascistic when you think about it. When you actually look at it, it's closer to fascism. The thing is this right here. This right here could go one of four ways. Scenario A, Donald Trump becomes the nominee. Donald Trump wins the presidency. Of course, he has to carry the Senate, of course, across the finish line. By the way, let me go ahead and answer one more thing to all the people out there who are DeSantis who keep on saying that Donald Trump is the establishment. He endorsed Mitch McConnell in 2020. Let me go ahead and say this really quick. Donald Trump endorsed every senator in 2020 when he was president. If he had not endorsed a single senator in their primary or endorsed a single senator going into that election, it's probably very possible that the party would not have been united and Trump would have lost by a bigger margin. I can't tell you what I really think happened because it's YouTube. Scenario B, Donald Trump runs for president. They lose it, but yet the Republicans gain Tester. They gain Baldwin. They gain Sherrod Brown's seat. They get the 3 seats, and they have enough senators to halt Joe Biden's agenda while at the same time trying to make him a bipartisan president. That right there is what I took away from that. Scenario C, Ron DeSantis becomes the nominee, being very, very young, knowing he can run more and more and more, ends his political career by actually losing the presidency because they go with the suburban strategy, which is always a failure because Trump voters will see through the donors of DeSantis and say, you know, we're just not going to participate, and you lose a very close election. Or scenario D, Ron wins, but Ron barely wins and doesn't really get much help in the Senate, and that also constrains the possibility of him actually fixing anything or implementing anything that is anti-woke. I just figured I would throw that out there. It's one of the main reasons why I'm such a big buff on Trump's one-term proposal, because it would simply be a reform term, which is something this country absolutely needs. Guys, John Claymore here. If you like the content, like button, subscribe, share the video, sign up for the comment section, and I'll see you guys later.